Hello and welcome. This is Katie. Thanks so much for stopping by. I am back with another project for Maker Forte, and today we're going to create a set of 4 cards using one slimline stamp. So I've got 2 mini slimline and 2 A2 size cards from one slimline stamp. So we're going to use the Everything's Coming Up Roses stamp set. It's actually got a stencil in there too, but we're not going to use that. I've got these sentiments I'm going to pull from the Confetti Celebration and the Hug stamp set. I've got some Canson XL watercolor paper, some white embossing powder, some Versamark ink, and then some Color Hive inks. So using an anti-static powder tool, this is just kaolin clay. Best thing you're going to use is kaolin clay, but you don't need a fancy applicator. You can just buy a little pouch of that powder and use just a nice fluffy powder brush to use that, but definitely use the kaolin clay for your anti-static powder. So inking up with Versamark, if you've got the Color Hive ink in clear, use that too. I need a re-inker for mine, so I can't use that right now. I do ink this up once on camera, but I do stamp it like 3 times off camera. What you can see is the image of the stamp there with all the stamping that I did. So that's really what you want to focus on. May take you 6 stampings to get that. But once you can see that impression with your stamping, then you know you're going to get a good solid embossing once you add your embossing powder. So I'm heat setting this, going to be do that till it's smooth and melted, and I am going to burn the paper. You're going to see that here in a second. I start to do it there and I keep going, and we're going to keep going with it because I'm going to cover it up and you'll never know that it was there. So using some English mustard, also be careful with the heat gun. Obviously don't intentionally burn your paper. I didn't. It was there and I wasn't going to do it again. So I knew that we're going to cover this up and we're going to cut some of it away. So I really wasn't concerned. So just be careful with your heat gun. So English mustard, I did add some clean clear water to the watercolor paper, giving it a nice sheen of water. There's not puddles of water, it's just a nice gloss of water. So English mustard, going to do a nice little coat of that throughout the whole panel here. I wanted to blend that in with the red luster, so that's where we're going to come in next. And I thought these colors would combine really nicely together. And we already know that Flamingo and Yellowstone from one of my previous videos blends really nicely together, makes a nice pretty orange. So I figured throwing red luster in there wasn't going to hurt anything. Now, I got a little bit too much color on the top right side, so I will add a little bit more water and we'll blend that out. What's nice about using your dye inks is, especially the Color Hive inks, they're water reactive, so you're going to get some nice color payoff, and you're not going to lose your vibrancy of color by adding water to it, which is really nice. So just blending that around, and I want to give a nice even look to the red luster and the yellow English mustard, you know, so that it's not too bright and orange in one place and not the other. So I'm going to come in with the Flamingo, and I added water the last 2 times before I added my ink color, but I'm not doing that here. I've got enough water on my paper, so I don't need to add more. In fact, that top right corner's got a little too much water, so I'm going to let that sit while I fill in some other clusters of roses. So what I'm doing with the Flamingo is I just want to bring out the rose buds that are there. And there's a mix of leaves and things like that that are in there. So I'm just really trying to bring out the clusters of roses that are within this stamp. But I want it to be, you know, haphazard, watercolory, you know, nothing too detailed, nothing too defined. But if you're looking at it, in fact, you could keep this panel whole. You don't have to trim it up like I'm going to do, but I thought it'd be fun to do something a little different and give a new card design or a different type of card design and give you ways to stretch your stamps. So if you have background stamps or if you have slimline stamps that you're not sure what to do with, try this, you know, do a little, you know, embossing, and then, you know, use your inks. Any inks, really, any dye inks are going to work to do watercoloring with. And that way you can change up the look of some of your stamps that maybe you haven't pulled out in a long time. Okay, so coming in with some more of that Flamingo and I added more to my mat because I wanted to deepen up that flamingo on those roses. I really wanted them to be more pinky orange than orange. So we're just going to fill in those petals and give a bit more definition. And like I said, I didn't dry this in between, but I didn't add more water either. So there's just enough water on the watercolor paper right now where it will fade off and blend the colors for you with very little effort, which is nice. I'm no professional watercolorist, so the easiest that I can get away with, I like. Okay, so we're going to fill that in. And there's a little bit on the lower right corner that didn't have quite as much yellow or orange, and we're going to fill that here in just a second. And one thing I want to mention is that if you ever get too much water, we're going to show you that here in a second. I'm going to show you this here in a second, is when you get too much water on your paper, always use your brush. Take your brush, dry it off, and then dip your brush back into whatever excess water you want to remove. Let the brush soak it up, dab it off, as you can see here on your paper towel. I've always found that if I take my paper towel and just dab it right onto my watercolor paper that I want to remove water from, it takes too much color. It almost instantly dries the portion of the paper that I'm at, and it doesn't look as fluid and vibrant as the other parts of the panel. So use your brush to absorb your excess water is the best recommendation I can give you. Okay, so I showed you a little stitch die. That's the MFT stitched snowdrift die. I just use that to cut my panels in half. And you could pop these up on foam. I chose not to. So the A2 size, when I cut the slimline down, I measured it at like 1.5 inches wide by 4 inches long. And then I realized that I had a couple panels that were not quite 4 inches long. So I decided to make mini slimlines with them. That way none of the panels will go to waste. And so the mini slimline measures 3.25 inches wide by 5 3/4, so you get a little 1/4 inch border around. And then the A2 is 4 by 5 1/4. And again, you can pop those up. I chose to go with some liquid glue to adhere those, just so it's all flat, but you could certainly pop those up on foam to give it a little bit more dimension. But that is going to wrap it up, my friends. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Be sure and check the description box below to follow us over at the Crafter Party, Maker Forte's Facebook group, and share what you're creating. We'd love to see what you guys are making. Thanks so much for joining me today. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I'll catch you in the next video.